John Gibson, the analyst on the Bowling Green Falcon Radio Network, joins us now. And John, Bowling Green went through such a horrible stretch of injuries in October. At one point down to just one scholarship running back. Now we are mid-November. They're coming off of sort of a bye week. They had the weekend off as they get ready for action. And I would suppose from the outside looking in, that probably came at a good time. This Falcon team is getting healthy.
Well, I think that's definitely it. Anytime you're a player during this part of the year, you get an extra day or two with the opportunity to get healthy, to get extra rest, get extra treatment. It definitely helps out. We all know that especially the running back room looked like a mass unit, and the training room was probably the busiest hub in all of Wood County for a while. I think that it definitely bodes well. I think it also gives you extra time to get some of those young guys coached up that are on scholarship to maybe plug in some of those holes because of the four game rule for the redshirt freshmen now. I think these are all things that you're seeing that are possible. And I think it's going to be pretty fun. I think, this is going to be I think this team has a chance to go down here and really make some hay at Yager Stadium.
That 4-game redshirt rule perhaps is the biggest rule change in the last 5 years that maybe we didn't quite grasp at how much of an impact that was going to have on teams, because it really has become a point now where if you haven't played 4 games at this point in the season, coach go, hey, yeah, let's throw these guys out. We can see what they have. They can get some game experience either beginning of the year or end of the year, and it doesn't take away that year. They can still redshirt for a season.
I think it's an amazing rule. I think I'm very pro student athlete. And so anytime you have a situation where student athletes are going to win and they're going to benefit from that, I love it. I think that I would have loved to have had those 4 games at the end of the season just to see what happens. And I think when you get guys, especially in these seasons where they're losing, where you're losing, you're not going to make a bowl game, you're not fighting for that type of thing, to give an opportunity to throw a young guy out there, it really helps in recruiting, because now coaches can go out there and say, hey, we're going to play you your 4 games. You'll get your 4 games. However many more you get will depend on how good you are. If you can guarantee a kid that, it keeps them from getting bored sitting at home. It keeps them engaged. I love the rule. I think it's a great rule. I even love it for, the situation with De'Aaron King down there in Houston, where he decided, let me take off this year. A lot of people didn't like that. I'm sure a lot of players, a lot of his teammates probably were upset about it, but I get it. When you go in there and you play 4 years, you're looking at a guy like De'Aaron King who's 21 years old. You give him another year, what does he become to actually make it to be a 22-year-old? And it's going to be controversial. There's probably going to be people that are going to want to tweak the rule. I like it as it is. I think it should stay.
You mentioned you're always in favor of what's good for the student athletes. So I've got to assume you like how NCAA is making small steps forward when it comes to name, image, and likeness rights.
I have not read that rule yet.
Okay.
I have not read it yet to see exactly what it does.
Well, and that's the thing. The devil's in the details. We don't know the details. We just know the NCAA has finally said, okay, we're going to do something. We don't know how it's going to work at this point.
Right. I mean, because you look at, you can tell me that, but then you tell me about this Chase Young situation where a family friend loans him money and he pays it back. Well, what's the problem? And I think that, if you're a regular student and a family friend loans you money and you pay it back, nobody answers any questions. Nobody asks any questions. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't pay it back, nobody asks any questions. And so I think, we're talking about the name and likeness things. I think the NCAA had no choice but to do that because of how many students now are monetizing their name and likeness through YouTube and through other social media entities. You've got like the young ladies who were, I believe they were basketball players at Kansas. They're like they're multimedia stars already, and you can't continue to tell them, no, you can't monetize that. I mean, the big case with the young man that was the kicker down at Central Florida, it got to a point, but it still goes beyond. It's still not to a point where we're saying, hey, we're going to divide this pie and give you a piece. We're saying, hey, so 90% of the student athletes, 95% of the student athletes won't be able to make any money off of this unless they actually go and make, the NCAA football video game or basketball games like they have been before. So there'll be some money coming to some of those guys, but you won't see that coming to, you won't see the big money going to any of the regular athletes. I mean, the NCAA, in all honesty, is a broken model.
Yes.
It's a broken model. We have to fix it. I mean, I think about my uncle all the time. He was considered an amateur athlete all of his career. His governing body was the International Amateur Athletic Federation. He was a 3-time Olympian and a world record holder, but he still got paid very, very well. There is a way that the NCAA can do this. If you can pay Nick Saban $10 million a year, you can find a way to break off a piece for the student athletes.
And obviously the NCAA was basically forced in this situation because there was a law passed in California. There's other states that are looking into similar laws, and you couldn't have different rules for all the different schools. You need to have some sort of uniformity. So again, though, we don't know the details of this yet, but it is something moving forward. Getting back to Bowling Green, trip down to Miami, the Red Hawks coming off an emotional win over the Ohio Bobcats. Miami's in the driver's seat in the MAC East, and in that win over Ohio, Miami did a very good job containing the Ohio quarterback Nathan Rourke. Are they going to be able to do the same thing to Grant Loy?
Well, I think that Grant Loy attacks a little bit different than Nathan Rourke. I think you get a lot of the Q runs from Grant, not so much option stuff. And so it's going to be a little bit different. I think Miami has a very stout defense, though. And the one thing I always say is it's very difficult to play in Yager Stadium. That is not an easy place to play. It is not. There's not the friendly confines for a visiting team, especially not a visiting Bowling Green team. This is a program that historically has referred to Bowling Green as the Pumpkinheads. And during my career, there was actually a pumpkin that was smashed with a baseball bat during my career there. So this is a rivalry game. And so I believe that Bowling Green has figured some things out with their running game. I think with the extra time off, the game plan for Miami to see what it is that they do, because Miami played last Wednesday, so they've only had 7 days. We've had a full 10. I think that we have a chance to schematically and physically, compete with this football team, whereas maybe that wouldn't have been the case in October.
And that's one of the nice things about what Chuck Martin has brought back to Miami, because prior to Chuck Martin, the Red Hawks, particularly home games at Yager Stadium, it was an empty place to play. There was no home field advantage for Miami. Under Chuck Martin, they've had some more success, and they are starting to get back to what Miami football historically has been.
Yeah, and I hate to see it because I don't necessarily care for Miami. I mean, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, there's Toledo, then there's Miami on my hatred list. That's 1 and 1A. And that's really the way that I feel about it. But it is good to see, it'd be great when there's actually a rivalry, when it means something for Bowling Green going forward. Now, mind you, there is a fringe opportunity for BG to get bowl eligible.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I'm sure Coach Loeffler has talked about with the guys. But this is actually an opportunity, to really go out there and play with the rival, to try to beat this rival and dash their hopes as much as it is. Keep your own hopes alive for something happening come December.
You mentioned bowl eligibility. In order for Bowling Green to do that, they need to win their last 3 games. Let me ask you this. Is this Bowling Green football program in a better place today than it was a year ago? Is it a better place than it was 2 years ago?
That's a tough question. It's loaded. And because I believe if Mike Jinks is still here, then Jared Dagey is still here. And I think if Jared Dagey is still here, then probably a bunch of the other players are still here. And I think that you're looking at a situation where this is a bowl-eligible team. So, and that's no knock on Coach Loeffler and his staff. I think eventually they will get the program back to where it needs to be, should I say. But I think that by Jinks leaving and the transfers that we saw, I think we actually took maybe a step, 2 steps back, and to eventually get back to where it needs to be. I think that, so to answer your question, I don't necessarily think it's in a better place. I think that there's more hope. I think that there's more. I think there's more hope. I think we can see.
Is the trajectory going back up at this point?
I do believe the trajectory is going back up. I do believe the trajectory is going back up, but I do believe that, we may be looking at a point where we kind of bottomed out. I think we are there's nowhere to go but up type of situation here. And again, Coach Loeffler and his staff has done a bang-up job recruiting. I expect, great recruiting classes over the next couple of years. But I think the limits on the scholarships, because they can only give 25, you're going to have a situation where Coach, he's limited in what he can do. You can only bring in so many guys. And so, because we're down so many guys already, it's going to take 2 or 3 recruiting cycles to get it back to a fully stocked program that's ready to go out there and win and compete with the MAC leaders, with the MAC champions at that point in time. So I think that it's a long crawl. I think it's a long crawl back, and I think that we could have Band-aided it if we had Jared. If Jared Dagey's still here, I think that we Band-aid this. We're a bowl team, and it looks pretty good. Without Jared, it makes it tough to say it's in a better place, but I think it will get there.
let me ask you this: when it comes to MACtion, does that hurt or help MAC recruiting? Because let me bring out why I'm going to say this. Now, the boilerplate answer is, it helps recruiting because it allows the MAC teams to play on weeknights. It allows those games to be on ESPN platforms. It allows coaches to go into high school and say, hey, you can play and your family's going to be able to watch you on television. They can stream your games. The drawback, obviously, is you don't have that same type of atmosphere on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night that you do on a Saturday afternoon. But I think another way where it might help in the recruiting is the fact that you've got a week like this where last weekend Bowling Green could go out and watch some guys play on Friday night, some high school guys. They can make some visits to high schools during the week and maybe help get some more inroads, because this is a critical recruiting period where you're trying to firm up everybody for that December period and see what you're going to need to get in January.
I think it helps all the way around. I can't find any negatives to the MACtion schedule. I think, especially when you're talking about BG going outside the region to recruit, because you can go into a Florida household or a Georgia household or a Texas household and you can say, look, we're going to give you 3-4 games a year that are going to be on national television, and then we'll give you 4 or 5 other games that you'll be able to stream. And that's big, to be able to tell a kid, not only can my parents, but all of my friends, all of the people that have supported me up until this point, they get a chance to watch me. That's a huge recruiting tool that is going to be helpful for bringing kids in. I also think that, like you said, it does allow you to get out there and see teams face to face, to see guys. Like, I've been stomping the ground for a kid like Mason Alberts. Mm-hmm. There's no reason in the world, in my opinion, that Mason Alberts does not have a Division I. It has very many Division I offers, if any, at this point. He's a Division I talent. I don't think it's at quarterback, but I think at safety he would be a monster back there. And those types of moments, if you get that weekend off, where you can go check out a high school playoff game, whereas you normally wouldn't. I can't find anything wrong with the MACtion. It elevates the profile of the league. It helps the players. Because nothing. All of these kids are DVRing these games. Right. You're going to go back and you're going to watch these games. So I can't find anything wrong with it at all.
All right, thank you very much, John Gibson. Tune in to John and Todd Walker coming up a Wednesday night on the Bowling Green Radio Network.